The morning sun of Draken Prime cast long shadows across the Imperial Palace gardens, its triple suns creating a kaleidoscope of amber and violet hues across the crystalline pathways. Within the ornate walls of the palace complex, the daily routines of 1,000 servants and guards proceeded with military precision, except for today, when one small, scaled creature decided to rewrite the script entirely. Sergeant Marcus Chin stood at attention outside the Empress's meditation chamber, his helmet tucked under his arm as protocol demanded during the morning contemplation hour. The helmet itself was a marvel of human engineering, adaptive alloy that could withstand plasma fire, integrated communications array, and a heads-up display that would make pre-contact Earth militaries weep with envy. But right now, it sat innocently on the marble bench beside him, gleaming in the morning light. Marcus had been stationed on Draken Prime for nearly 2 standard years, serving as part of the human diplomatic guard assigned to protect Ambassador Liu and maintain Earth's presence in the Imperial Court. The Draconian Empire spanned 47 star systems, and its emperor, Vorthax the Magnificent, ruled with wisdom that had brought peace to a turbulent sector of the galaxy. The humans, relative newcomers to the galactic stage, had been honored with positions of trust, a testament to the impression they'd made during the border wars. What Marcus hadn't been briefed on, however, was babysitting. The first sign of trouble came as a soft, chittering sound from somewhere near his boots. Marcus's training kept him from looking down immediately. Guards did not break posture during duty hours, but his peripheral vision caught movement. Something small and iridescent skittered across his boot, moving with the jerky curiosity of youth. It was roughly the size of a house cat, covered in scales that shifted through the color spectrum like oil on water. A long, serpentine tail swished behind it, tipped with a small tuft of what appeared to be feathers or proto-wings. 2 large, intelligent eyes, far too intelligent for something so small, fixed on Marcus's helmet with unmistakable fascination. Marcus's blood ran cold. He recognized those color-shifting scales from the briefing holos. This was a Draconian hatchling, which meant it could only be one individual in the entire palace complex. Princess Zixera, third-born of Emperor Vorthax, barely 2 months old, and already the subject of 17 incident reports filed by various members of the palace staff. The hatchling approached the helmet with the caution of a predator stalking prey, her small body low to the ground. She circled it once, twice, her head tilting at angles that would have been impossible for a human neck. Then, with a burst of speed that caught Marcus completely off guard, she launched herself at the helmet. There was a moment of comic struggle as the hatchling's head and upper body disappeared into the helmet's opening. Her tail thrashed wildly outside, and muffled chirping sounds echoed from within the adaptive alloy. Marcus stood frozen, his military training at war with the absurdity of the situation. Should he retrieve the helmet? That would mean breaking posture. Should he alert the royal nannies? That would require using his comm unit, which was inside the helmet currently being occupied by Imperial offspring. The decision was made for him when the helmet began to move. Princess Zixera emerged from inside the helmet, but she hadn't abandoned it. Instead, her small head now poked out through the front opening, her scales bright with what Marcus had learned to recognize as Draconian pleasure. The helmet, far too large for her small frame, sat on her like an oversized hat, its sides dragging on the ground as she waddled forward. "Your Highness," Marcus said quietly, maintaining his at-ease posture while trying to project calm authority. "I'm going to need that back." The hatchling's response was to duck completely into the helmet like a turtle retreating into its shell. The helmet rocked slightly as she moved around inside, and Marcus could hear tiny scratching sounds as her claws explored the interior padding and circuitry. This was, Marcus reflected, not covered in any training manual Earth had ever produced. The sound of approaching footsteps saved him from having to make a difficult decision. Royal Nanny Ninthera, an older Draconian female whose scales had faded to a dignified silver gray, rounded the corner at a pace that could only be described as a sprint by her species standards. "Sergeant Chun," she hissed, her translator rendering her relief in crisp standard. "You found her." "The princess disappeared from the nursery 20 minutes ago. We've had half the palace guards searching." She stopped, her large eyes fixing on the helmet. "Is she inside your protective headgear?" "Yes, ma'am," Marcus confirmed, still not moving from his post. She claimed it approximately 3 minutes ago. Ninthera approached the helmet carefully, making soft clicking sounds that Marcus recognized as the draconian equivalent of a mother calling to her young. The helmet didn't move. The nanny tried again, this time adding what Marcus's translator rendered as snack time and favorite crystals. A small snout emerged from the helmet's opening, sniffed the air, and retreated. "She's made it her base," Ninthera said, a note of weary recognition in her voice. "Last week it was the ambassador's briefcase. Before that, the emperor's ceremonial crown. That was a diplomatic incident we're still recovering from." Marcus's military bearing cracked slightly. "The emperor's crown. His Majesty was very understanding," Ninthera said diplomatically. He pointed out that claiming valuable objects is an important developmental stage for young draconians. It teaches them resource acquisition and territorial defense. She sighed, "Though I suspect he's less understanding when it happens repeatedly to his formal wear." As if on cue, the helmet began to move across the marble floor. Princess Zixera had figured out how to walk while inside it, creating a bizarre sight of an Imperial Guard helmet scuttling across the palace grounds under its own power, trailing a small, iridescent tail. "Should I?" Marcus gestured helplessly at his ambulatory headgear. "No, no," Ninthera said quickly. "Never try to forcibly remove a hatchling from their claimed base. They become quite territorial." She tapped her snout thoughtfully. "We'll need to wait until she gets bored or hungry. Usually takes about 6 to 8 hours. Marcus's eyes widened. 8 hours? "Ma'am, I'm on duty for another 4 hours, and I need that helmet for—" The helmet stopped moving. Slowly, Princess Zixera's head emerged again, this time with her scales shifting to a contemplative blue-green pattern. Her large eyes fixed on Marcus with an intelligence that was slightly unnerving in something so young. She made a soft, trilling sound. "She likes you," Ninthera translated, though Marcus's own translator was already parsing the emotional content. "She thinks you smell interesting. Different from draconians." "I'm honored." Marcus ventured. The hatchling made a decision. Still wearing the helmet like a portable fortress, she waddled directly to Marcus's boots and sat down, her tail wrapping around his ankle in what was unmistakably a possessive gesture. Ninthera's scales rippled with what Marcus had learned to recognize as draconian amusement. "Congratulations, Sergeant Shun. You've been adopted." "Respectfully, ma'am, I'm a human guard, not a nursery attendant." "The princess has made her choice," Ninthera said, her tone brooking no argument. "And Imperial protocol is quite clear. When a royal hatchling claims a guardian, that bond must be respected for the development period." Development period usually concludes when they reach adolescence. About 20 standard years. Marcus's carefully maintained military composure finally shattered. 20 years. Unless she loses interest sooner, Ninthera added helpfully. "Though given that she's currently using your protective equipment as a base and has marked you as her territory, I'd say she's quite committed." The helmet-wearing hatchling chirped happily and pressed closer to Marcus's leg, her scales now shifting through a rainbow of contented colors. The meditation chamber door opened, and Ambassador Lu emerged, her dark eyes immediately taking in the scene. Her guard standing at modified attention with a Imperial hatchling wrapped around his ankle, said hatchling wearing his helmet like a trophy, and the royal nanny looking on with poorly concealed amusement. "Sergeant Shun," Ambassador Lu said calmly, her diplomatic training keeping her expression perfectly neutral. "Would you care to explain why Princess Zixera appears to have claimed your standard-issue military equipment?" "Ma'am," Marcus began, then paused. "How exactly did one explain this situation?" "The princess found my helmet unattended and has established it as her base of operations. Royal Nanny Ninthera informs me that I've been adopted as her guardian for the foreseeable developmental period." Ambassador Lu was quiet for a long moment. Then, to Marcus's surprise, she smiled. "You know, Sergeant, when I accepted this posting, I was told that human draconian relations would require flexibility, cultural understanding, and adaptation to unexpected circumstances." She looked down at the helmet-wearing hatchling. "I suppose this qualifies." "Does this mean," Marcus started. "It means," Ambassador Lu interrupted gently, "that you're about to become the first human to be formally recognized as a guardian to Imperial offspring. This is actually an extraordinary honor, Sergeant." The cultural implications alone. She trailed off, already calculating the diplomatic benefits. Princess Zixera chose that moment to emerge fully from the helmet, though she kept one small claw possessively hooked onto its edge. She looked up at Marcus with those impossibly intelligent eyes and made a sound that his translator rendered as the draconian equivalent of mine. Marcus looked at his helmet, now slightly scratched from tiny claws and probably in need of recalibration. He looked at the hatchling, who had apparently decided that a human guard was the perfect guardian figure. He looked at Ambassador Liu, who was already pulling out her comm unit to report this development to Earth Command. Then he did what any good soldier does when faced with impossible situations. He adapted. Marcus knelt down slowly, bringing himself closer to the hatchling's level. Princess Zixera's scales brightened immediately, shifting to excited yellows and oranges. He extended one hand, palm up, in the universal gesture of peace he'd learned worked across species. "All right, Your Highness," he said softly. "But if you're going to use my helmet as your base, we need to establish some ground rules. Rule 1. I need it back when I'm on active patrol." The hatchling tilted her head, considering. Then she carefully pushed the helmet toward Marcus with her snout, but kept one claw resting on top of it. Compromised, Ninethera's scales rippled again with amusement. She's a clever one, this princess. She understands negotiation already. Over the next few hours, as Marcus completed his duty shift with an Imperial hatchling alternating between riding on his shoulder and napping inside his helmet, he reflected on the strange turns life could take. He'd joined the military to see the stars, to represent humanity among the vast alien civilizations that filled the galaxy. He'd trained for combat, for diplomatic protection, for first contact scenarios. Nobody had trained him for babysitting a princess who considered his helmet to be prime real estate. But as Princess Zixera chirped contentedly from her base, the helmet now sitting on a cushion Marcus had requisitioned, with the hatchling curled up inside like a dragon guarding treasure. He had to admit that this was perhaps the most important mission he'd ever been assigned, because here, in this small moment of cross-species connection, in a hatchling's innocent claim of territory and a guard's patient acceptance of his new role, the future of human-draconian relations was being written. Not in treaties or trade agreements, but in the simple act of a human soldier being gentle with someone else's child. Princess Zixera's eyes slid closed as she drifted to sleep, one claw still resting on the helmet's edge, her scales shifting to the deep blues and purples of contentment. And Sergeant Marcus Chun, guardian to Imperial offspring and protector of both humanity's honor and one very determined hatchling, stood watch over his new charge, ready to defend both the Empire and one oversized helmet that had become the most important territory in the palace. Sometimes, he thought, the best diplomatic missions were the ones you never saw coming.